Thank you so much for joining us today on IPS News. We have with us Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who is the chair of the board at Women Deliver. Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka is also the former United Nations Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women, who completed her term in August 2021 after being sworn into office on 19th August 2013. Throughout her illustrious career, she directed her energy towards issues of human rights, equality, and social justice, with a specific emphasis on gender and youth development. She has also worked tirelessly on programs and policies to reduce inequality throughout her political career, which began as a member of the first democratically elected South African Parliament, then as Deputy Minister in the Department of Trade and Industry in the 90s, as Minister of Mineral and Energy, and finally as Deputy President of South Africa in between 2005 and 2008. Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka is a global advocate for women and girls. Thank you so much for your time. Wonderful to have you join us today at IPS News, and truly lovely speaking to you today.
Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon to your audience.
Thank you so much. So could you tell us a little about your new role at Women Deliver, and what is your vision moving forward as an influencer and gender equality champion? Also, do tell us a little about the Women Deliver 2023 conference, which will be held for the first time in Africa.
Yes. Well, as you know, the world has changed and is changing drastically. And these changes are impacting on women. Poverty has deepened sadly. Women's sexual and reproductive rights are under attack. Climate change is upon us. Changes in technology are also impacting women who are usually not the most technologically inclined people. I mean, the world has a gender divide. And of course, we've seen the importance of young women as actors that we must co-lead with into the future. So Women Deliver has taken all of this in their stride. Women Deliver has changed itself. It has had to look into itself and recognize that it needs a transformation and to be much more deeper in the areas that it works in. As you know, we work on sexual health and reproductive rights. These are core issues for Women Deliver. We work with young women. We co-lead with them, but that is not a done deal. It's something that we have to work on. We also have a conference, as you know, which we have coming, as we have said, in Africa for the first time. And that requires us to prepare all these constituencies that are important for Women Deliver. But as we do this work, we are also very conscious about the impact of climate change and gender. We are also conscious of the issue of race and how it impacts on us. So it's a very packed agenda.
Yeah. You're an international gender equality champion. How would you describe your journey so far? Do you think we are in a better place now in 2023 when it comes to gender equality and rights of girl, child, and women in the world?
Yeah, it's a very mixed bag. There was a time in the last decade where we were in the right direction towards, for instance, addressing extreme poverty. The numbers were looking good. but things changed.
Yeah.
The pandemic hit women disproportionately, in particular young women who are also parents of young children. These are the women who are now facing food insecurity in a significant way. And of course, we have seen that the conflicts have not ended. They have escalated, and now we have the Ukraine war. Women, as you know, under any situation that creates a humanitarian crisis, women are always likely to be the ones that bear the brunt more than the men bearing arms. Women and children tend to be affected much more. So if you're asking me about women's poverty, we have more of that. If you're asking me about women's representation actually in institutions that matter, for instance, in many countries, the institutions that were dealing with COVID, we have had underrepresentation of women, even though COVID had to deal with a lot of issues that affect women.
Yeah.
Women and gender-based
Sorry,
violence.
I'm just going to cut you for a second because your video seems to have gone off.
The what, sorry?
Your video is not visible. It's turned off. Now it's back. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, an increase in gender-based violence and trafficking of women. So, you know, progress is uneven, and at the same time, the one area where we need progress much more, which is where women are affected by poverty, we have seen that things have gone worse. So it's hard to talk about progress, but you cannot deny that there are more women leaders than before, that's for sure. There are more women in the labor force. There are more girls in school. It's kind of like our best is not good enough.
Yeah.
So there's still much more for us to do.
Yeah. How can professional organizations commit to gender parity and leadership? We often see women face many issues such as gender pay gap, workplace harassment, lack of growth-oriented opportunities. So what can be done to make room at the table for women to succeed at work, and especially now after over a year into the global pandemic, which has impacted lives of women in many ways?
Yeah, you know, women's representation and gender equality in general is a matter of good governance, because you are ruling over or providing service to people with them. Representation means that it is by the people, for the people. It is not by the men, for us all.
Yeah.
So firstly, I think there's a big policy aspect that we have to continuously push on. And to say that any institution or country that does not have adequate gender representation, it is flawed on corporate governance. Gender equality also brings in the much needed skills that women bring in and provide diversity of views and inclusion. So when we see places where women are underrepresented, it's important for us to take our chair and just go and sit.
Yeah.
It is also important to mobilize allies from the other side, so that it is not always women who are outside who are knocking. There must be someone inside who is trying to open the door for you. And therefore, working with men and pushing an agenda for men who stand for gender equality is also very important. Men with authority and power are critical as allies for gender equality. And we have to constantly remind them how flawed their leadership is if they cannot take a stand in terms of support for women. They are the men who can just go to human resource or to the treasury of their organization and fix the issue of unequal pay, for instance.
Yeah. Talking about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, health systems across the world have also been overwhelmed, and to keep up with the care demands resulting in collateral damage to women's health. The very basic access to adequate health services, the ability to exercise rights and freedoms, claiming equal chances irrespective of gender, are fundamental women's rights and human rights. And as we've seen in many countries, they've been disrupted. What should be done to revoke the impact of COVID-19 on women and their healthcare rights?
Of course, COVID affected our health systems and took away access to care and services for everyone, but in particular for women. SRHR for women was severely hampered. Women couldn't get services on a constant basis. Women and everybody, mental health was affected, and there was no opportunity, but women with chronic disease as well. Women with HIV, AIDS, women giving birth, because giving birth could not stop because there was COVID. So this really raises a bigger issue for all our health institutions and systems about their readiness to both deal with the pandemic and continue to provide the everyday much needed services. I mean, it is worrying because we are not talking about whether there will be another pandemic, it's just when there will be another pandemic. Mm-hmm. If another pandemic finds us in this situation that we are in now, I just fear what would happen. So there's the issue of human resources that is needed in the health system. Women are highly represented in the health system, but are not in the leadership space where they can make a case for women's participation. We saw that during COVID, women are 83% nurses, and we saw that nurses almost were in the forefront of saving lives. Mm-hmm. So were doctors. Of course, women in the healthcare service are the ones who provide the cleaning and the necessary hygiene that is needed in the facilities. So if you combine all of that, it's a lot of women who carry our health needs on their shoulders. So adequate representation is, for me, a really important one. But the supply of women into specialized areas through ensuring that women are educated, as well as ensuring that we have a pipeline starting from a younger age, children in school in STEM. After COVID, a lot of young people, or rather during COVID, a lot of young people were exposed to science, and especially to health science. So there is a lot of interest amongst young people. This should be an opportunity for us that we must not miss, to recruit and to encourage them to consider careers that will take them into the area of health. And when we do that, we have to make sure that we recognize the contribution that women are making. So this whole area of underrepresentation of women that we've already touched on, which is almost a norm now. People think it is normal for women not to be represented. And even in an area where clearly women can play such an important role, and women can play, by the way, an important role in every area, it is easy to just ignore them because there's almost like no expectation that women will be there. So I think we have to look at this issue of health in the context of gender equality in general, because it looks like in gender equality, you can't solve one problem without the other. You have to push everything at the same time.
Yeah. And talking about the leadership roles of women, women-led countries handled COVID-19 much better than their male counterparts.
Exactly.
And there are many studies to prove that. But there are only 22 countries that have elected women head of state or government, while 119 nations have never had a woman leader. This number is worrying. It also shows that countries are failing to tap into women and their talents when it comes to leadership roles. What are your comments on this? And how can we build a better, stronger post-pandemic world by tapping into women and their leadership roles and positions?
You know, I am a believer of targets and quotas and policies that define and guide what must happen as far as women's representation is concerned. And having adopted quotas, targets, and having adopted policies, then expect accountability and implementation, and have consequences where that does not happen. I do not believe that addressing the underrepresentation of women will happen voluntarily. And I am quite old and I have seen this for all my life. And it just is not something that we could say is gonna come. Otherwise, we're gonna be waiting forever. So we need to have interventions that are enforceable. And we need to have mechanisms for accountability for those who are responsible for implementing. And we also need women themselves to continue making the demands. We need girls and women to be out in the street, walking, marching, making the demands. We have to balance both policy that happens within the context of a boardroom and policy demands that happen outside through those who are carrying placards.
Yeah. My last two questions. One is, since Women Deliver works so closely on young girls and education, I want to touch upon that despite evidence demonstrating how central girls' education is to development, gender disparities in education still persists. 129 million girls are out of school around the world, and there are still multiple barriers to girls' education like poverty, safety, hygiene, sanitation, child marriage, and gender-based violence. We often see families still favoring or choosing to invest in boys' education rather than girls. So I want to know what, according to you, should be done or could be done to create and promote gender equitable education systems, and also influence the society to keep investing in their girl child, which unfortunately, as we are seeing across the world, is not happening right now.
It's important to constantly engage parents, as well as to engage the education system, which is a place where children spend a lot of their early years, in some cases being misdirected. Mm-hmm. And we need also to engage with teachers who are the custodians of the values that children are exposed to in school. In my foundation, at Mlambo Foundation, we have just decided that we're just going to work with teachers and focus on them because they are such a critical constituency for influencing what happens to young people and what happens to girls. So as to make sure that for sustainability and succession, you have these young people that constantly come up, having been exposed to education that takes into account gender equality. So I'm afraid it's just the hard work all the time with parents, with young people themselves, and of course, taking on the policymakers and influencers who have the platforms that they can use to the best advantage of women and girls.
And my last question, what would your message be for young girls and women everywhere who are living through these very challenging and unprecedented times? What can they do or should do to continue on their path towards gender equality and leadership roles and positions in their professional lives?
Honestly, my heart goes out to our young people today because of just the difficulties that we are all facing today. But I feel it's even harder for the younger people. I'm also at the same time encouraged by how perceptive young people are and how substantive they are in their analysis and understanding of the issues, how much they understand intersectionality, and they are therefore able not to work in a silo, but to tackle many issues at the same time, which is what we have to do to keep it moving. So my encouragement for them is to stay the course because they are not the leaders of tomorrow, they are the leaders of today. I do want to challenge older people like myself to really open up the space and collaborate and co-create with younger people and not treat them as a side event. They are the main stage, and make sure that engagement and involvement of young people is not token. It is real. And for that, I go back, you need the policies that say that A, B, C, D is expected to women. And of course, I also want to urge that young people must, as they take on to the center stage, continue to bring in other young people so that everyone is lifting as they climb, so that we always have an open door for more people to come in and be empowered and to take charge.
Yeah. All right. On that very inspiring note, I want to say thank you so much. It was truly wonderful to have you join us on IPS News and for taking your time. And I'm sure anybody who has had the chance to watch this is going to be highly inspired. And many congratulations and good luck on your new role. And we all look forward to the conference as well. As we know, very exciting conversations are going to come out of that. So we also look forward to that. Thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.